Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Now, if you watch this channel every day, chances are you love movies in general. But let's be honest, there are a few brands that we love a little bit more. And today we're going to be talking about three such fan favorites. However, before we get into the news of the day, I also want to bring up, speaking of fan favorites, that the most recent episode of BTT Voice is going up today on the main Beyond the Trailer channel, talking about James Bond. I hope we'll go check that out later today, but also I want to take this opportunity to announce the topic for the next episode of BTT Voice, and that's Disney's live-action Beauty and the Beast, which is our first story of the day, so if you're looking for inspiration for what to discuss in your submission for BTT Voice, there will be plenty of topics for you to cover after you've watched today's first story, because that picture is coming together very quickly. But before we get into those details, I just want to refresh your memory on how to submit a video for BTT Voice. Now you want to keep it to about 30 seconds approximately. If you're a little over, that's okay. But remember, you don't want to abuse poor Clayton, who edits these videos. And if you give him too much to go through, it's just going to be too difficult for him to get this together in a timely fashion. By the way, the Oscars and my being sick held up the Bond episode. Clayton got the edit done in time, just in case anyone mentions that. I know you guys have been looking forward to seeing that episode, so I'm glad it's finally going up today. So you want to keep it to around 30 seconds. You can say anything that you want about Disney's live-action Beauty and the Beast. You can be positive, you can be negative, you can be not sure how you feel. Just be honest and have fun with it. A lot of you are really having a lot of fun with some of your submissions, and it's making for great videos. But at the end of the day, again, just being heartfelt is the most important thing. Just being honest about how you actually feel about the movie. So record those 30 seconds approximately and upload it to YouTube. Then do it as an unlisted video, not private, because then I can't download it for Clayton. Then send me the link to that unlisted YouTube video at grace@gracerandolph.com. Again, that's grace@gracerandolph.com. And wait, give me about 48 hours and I'll get back to you and let you know that I did receive your submission. I'm giving you a really long time to submit, 2 weekends, because I know a lot of you have, of course, busy schedules. So you have until Sunday, March 29th, the end of the day, approximately, because of course we're accounting for the world clock. But basically, the idea is that Monday morning on March 30th, I'm going to download the last of them. So that's how long you have, but you can submit them starting right now, again, to grace@gracerandolph.com. And I'll send reminders on social media. So I hope you're following me on Facebook or Twitter. And if you want to, the information to do so is in the video description. All right, so let's get on to today's three fan favorite stories. And the first, of course, is about the live-action Beauty and the Beast. Now, this, again, as I said, is coming together quite quickly. And we've already been talking about the slew of casting announcements for the lead roles. Emma Watson as Belle, Dan Stevens as the Beast from Downton Abbey, Luke Evans as Gaston. But more casting has come in. But first, also a release date. Let's see here, March 17th, 2017. Now, that's 2 years away. But of course, they have already some fairy tales set for next year. The Jungle Book, Alice in Wonderland, Through the Looking Glass, the second sequel, the sequel to that first film. The one, by the way, that actually kicked off the live-action fairy tale craze. The one that started them all, the live-action Snow White, if you will. So that's why this is set for 2017. But it's also important to note that they are taking the Cinderella spot for 2017. It's pretty much the exact same release date, and why wouldn't they? Because they've had such a strong reaction to Cinderella at the box office. An incredibly successful live-action film with no 3D, no less, and still was able to just edge out Maleficent, as we discussed yesterday on Movie Math. So Disney knows that they have something hot here, and they are not going to let up or let someone else jump in there and take that release date. So live-action Beauty and the Beast is set. Then what else is there in terms of casting? And then there's one other big announcement that I think is going to really inspire a lot of you with your BTT Voice episodes. But first of all, Josh Gad on Friday was cast as LeFou, Gaston's sidekick. That's spectacular casting. This project is coming together quite well. I'm very excited about it. But Josh Gad will be LeFou. It's kind of the exact same character he plays in Frozen as Olaf and often plays everywhere. And I'm impressed with Josh Gad's ability to get so much mileage out of the same character. But hey, It's working. He's got a show coming up on FX, The Comedians, opposite Billy Crystal. I think he'll be a little edgier there. But still, he's making a lot of money for the Disney studio, Empire. But I think it's very interesting, and I continue, on a side note, to not see them making any real, headway with Idina Menzel or Kristen Bell, which you would think, or even Jonathan Groff. I'm a big Jonathan Groff fan as well. That you would not see them making any progress with those individuals, who I think are just as important to the success of Frozen. Who knows? Maybe Josh Gad's the cheapest of the group, but they are really, really latching on to him and making him a Disney talent. All right, so he'll be LeFou. Emma Thompson, so we've got two Emmas here. She'll be Mrs. Potts, which I think raises a really interesting question as to how they're going to handle these animated, inanimate objects in the house in a live-action movie, right? I mean, in the stage musical, of course, they had these big costumes, but they weren't actually the size of a teacup. How are they going to put a face on a teacup in a live-action movie? Of course, we know how they could do it, but will they just do such a straightforward adaptation? And would such a thing work in live-action? I mean, it's cute to have a teapot with a face in an animated movie, but I think it might be a little creepy in a live-action movie. We'll see. But then how else is the teapot going to sing and talk and be soothing and, tell Belle that maybe the Beast isn't so bad? So, of course, expect casting announcements on Lumiere. Perhaps Johnny Depp. Of course, that Be Our Guest musical number is going to be huge. Yes, there will be a musical number. We'll get to that in just a second. That's our big other thing to discuss. But I also want to mention that Kevin Kline has been cast as Maurice, of course, Belle's father. That's a great role. It's not going to be a big role, but of course he's going to have that great scene when he first discovers the Beast's castle. Now let's move on to the other big announcement, and that's that not only will the original songs be kept intact, but with new recordings by, obviously, I believe, our new cast members. That's a very big deal. They're going to finally have one of these live-action movies, fairy tales, be a musical. That could potentially be a game changer and elevate this live-action fairy tale genre to the next level. But also it was announced that Alan Menken will team with Tim Rice, who he's teamed with before, to do the new songs for Beauty and the Beast, and that's huge. I think that that's going to be very exciting. And also, if you stay through the end credits even of Cinderella, Lily James does a cover of A Dream is a Wish Your Heart Makes, and then Helena Bonham Carter sings Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo, and they're actually both pretty darn good. So they could have tentatively made this Cinderella that's out right now a musical. I mean, I don't think that it worked out so well for Disney. Who cares what they could have done at this point? But I think going forward, we just discussed The Little Mermaid. I had my casting ideas for that and how I felt that it really needed to be a musical. And so perhaps you will see when The Little Mermaid does make it to the big screen, it will also be a musical if that's the route they're going with Beauty and the Beast. Very, very exciting. But also, one other thing I want to point out to you as you get ready to make your BTT Voice video is that one of the things I'm most excited about with this film, and I suspect it will be a straight adaptation, it's such a classic, wonderful story, and it was so sophisticated, the original animated film even. I mean, it was very layered, unusually so for an animated film, and which is why it was the first animated movie to be ever nominated for a Best Picture Oscar. But back then, of course, they didn't have the animation category, which really robs a lot of animated movies of making that jump today. Of course, Toy Story 3 was able to be nominated in both categories, but it had no chance really at Best Picture because everybody knew it was taking home animated. So it kind of handicaps any animated film in the Best Picture race if it manages to make it into the cut. So anyway, Beauty and the Beast, already fantastic the way it is. Linda Wolverton wrote that script. As you might recall, when Frozen 2 was made official, I suggested she write the script for that. She's a very talented screenwriter, also wrote Alice in Wonderland live action, Maleficent live action. But the person writing the script here was Stephen Chbosky, who wrote The Perks of Being a Wallflower, which was based on his own novel, and he actually directed that as well, with, of course, Emma Watson. I'm sure that he's a big part of why she felt comfortable signing on to this, and it's a big part of why I feel comfortable about the movie in general, because I think he's a very sophisticated writer who does a great job of dealing a lot with the emotions of the characters at hand, both male and female. So I think, and he of course dealt with outsiders in The Perks of Being a Wallflower, and both Belle and the Beast, well, the Beast obviously doesn't start out as an outsider, but I think he comes to understand what that's like based on the curse that's placed on him. So I think this is going to be fantastic, very exciting. I'm very excited about it, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say about it in your submissions for BTT Voice. Again, you have until the end of the day, Sunday, March 29th. Now, another Disney story for the second story, and I never thought that I would be discussing a Kingdom Hearts story with you, but and this is a developing story, but the reason I wanted to bring it up is to give Kingdom Hearts fans hope that you are on Disney's radar. Disney has not forgotten about you in terms of the grand scheme of things. Because every time we talk about live-action fairy tales, etc., there's always someone in the comments who says, "Where's my Kingdom Hearts movie?" Now, Kingdom Hearts, of course, is a very popular video game, particularly popular in Asia, I believe, which you'll see evidence of that in just a moment. But it combines all the Disney characters together into like this fantasy epic adventure. And so it's like it's a cross universe, and that's a lot of times when we talk about the potential cinematic Disney princess universe, a lot of you are like, well, why isn't that just Kingdom Hearts? It's kind of almost like what they're doing with the Disney, the Disney Infinity game that you can buy for the different play systems now. With the different figurines, and you go put it down, and you can run around. I bought that, by the way, and I could not figure out what the goal of the game was. It was very frustrating. So if anyone knows what the goal of that game is, please share it with me, because I stopped playing it. I was like, I love these little figurines, but I just don't know what to do once I'm in the game. It's beautiful, but quite frustrating. But anyway, Kingdom Hearts 3 is coming out, and it was announced yesterday that D23 Japan in 2013 apparently was such a success, they're bringing it back in November 2015. So we just talked about Comic-Con coming to China, and now we have another D23 Japan event, again, for the second time, returning this year as well. Big time for Asia in terms of fan events. Now, just like us, well, different countries, but in the region at least, they've got a Comic-Con and they've got a D23. So very exciting news, and again, underlines how important the box office in that region of the world is becoming. So part of the D23 event, this will take place again in November. Great time for that, because it's right before their biggest movie-going time of the year, which is in January. Well, that's in China for the Lunar New Year, but I'm sure they're suspecting a lot of the D23 Japan news will carry over to not only to the rest of the region, but the world. So they're going to have, of course, all the Star Wars, Marvel, Disney. They're going to have a big Disney princess exhibit there. So if you're in Japan, you probably want to mark your calendar to purchase tickets to attend, because it sounds really fantastic. I believe it's going to be at Tokyo Disney at that resort, just as the D23 event here in the United States is at Disneyland. But anyway, they are having a Kingdom Hearts event, and it's called, they're calling it, this is very interesting, because even though in 2013 it was just a panel where the executive producer of the game, let's see here, Shinji Hashimoto, plus a lot of voice actors showed up to discuss their experiences with the game, this fan event is tentatively being called Kingdom Hearts The Theater. That's the working title. Official information will be released in late April via Disney. But I just wanted to give you a heads up on this, to pay attention to it, and know that Disney is aware that this is a big property for them, and that it's starting to rear its head outside of just its own fan base. That they are starting to make it a part of their larger events, and that's going to raise its profile and potentially put it in position for bigger and better things. Maybe an animated series, a TV show, or, of course, the Holy Grail, a movie. Although TV is so popular these days, who knows what the Holy Grail really is for shows. I think it differs per property. So that's the second story of the day. I'm happy to deliver that news to you Kingdom Hearts fans. Let's move on to the third story, and that's good old Deadpool. This, of course, is a Marvel property, but it's not owned by Disney. This is over at Fox, and it seems like they're finally getting things right. Tom Rothman's no longer the head of that studio, and it looks like he's just going to go and mess up Spider-Man instead over at Sony, which he has now taken over. So anyway, you got the Amy Pascal gig, and we've discussed that already. But with Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds has made some comments which circled the web yesterday, which were very encouraging. And he said that the movie they're making, they're working extremely hard to be incredibly faithful to the source material, and Ryan Reynolds promises that it will please even the most difficult to please fanboy, or at least he said, and I thought this was a nice little humble add-on, that's the hope. So I'm really excited that the the Deadpool movie is going to go in that direction, to be extremely loyal to its fan base, which of course is going to be its core demographic on which it will need to build its success. If it doesn't please that group of people, it isn't going to please anyone. And it's necessary for that group of people to be excited about it so they can take that excitement over at Fox and expose the mainstream to it and go, look, this group of people is super excited about this. Maybe you should be too. That's a big way that publicity works, especially with these properties that have a fan base. It's, almost, the bandwagon approach, we'll say. I was going to say lemmings, but that has a negative connotation. We'll go with bandwagon because, hey, when you see a party happening over there, why not go check it out, right? I've done that many a time myself with properties that I'm not into, and I often can understand why everybody's over there partying. Even if it's not my cup of tea, I have a good time experiencing the party, so to speak. So I think that's good, but what's very interesting, the other thing I wanted to bring up here is that if Deadpool is like super, meta like it's supposed to be. Someone, by the way, asked me what meta meant. Meta meant self-aware. Meta means you're aware, for instance, you're aware you're in a movie. Or, for instance, with Birdman, it's aware, Michael Keaton, even though he's playing Regan Thompson, he's very aware that he's also, in some ways, playing himself, Michael Keaton, because it references his own past with Batman. So meta means, there's a lot of self-referential, plot points or lines or jokes. So that's what meta humor is. And Deadpool, of course, is very meta, even to the point where he breaks the fourth wall and talks directly to the viewer, which he did in the test footage, which was awesome. Very strong reaction to that test footage. It did quite well on the internets. But just because something does well on the internets doesn't mean it's going to do well on the big screen, which we've seen time and time again at this point. So, oh, by the way, also it's been said that there's going to be they're really going to take Fox to task for X-Men Origins Wolverine in the movie, and that would be absolutely hilarious. I hope that Fox lets them do that. There's nothing more endearing than someone who's willing to poke fun at their own faux pas, right? I think it's wonderful, and I think that Fox could only benefit from acknowledging what a disaster that movie was, especially when it comes to Deadpool. But anyway, let's go back to my other point that I was beginning to make, and that's that Deadpool could perhaps be too niche to be a mainstream success. It's very violent. It's an acquired taste. It's a little like Archer. Now, of course, Archer is a very popular show, but only in the scheme of things. It's not something that's mega popular. It's a popular animated show on a cable network. So while it's something that people recognize at Comic-Con, and it's a pop culture reference that most people would get at this point, it's not like some huge successful show like, let's say, Game of Thrones. So I think that it will be interesting. I'm very curious to see what kind of box office numbers Deadpool is able to do. Maybe it should have been like a TV show. Like, for instance, Con Man, that very successful web series that they're raising money for over on Indiegogo with Nathan Fillion and Alan Tudyk. Fantastic property. If you haven't heard about that, I strongly suggest you go check it out over at Indiegogo. I think you might have a few days still to contribute to the campaign, but I think that's going to be a big hit. But again, in a niche market. But for a movie to really be a strong performer needs to reach out to the mainstream. So I'm just curious to see if Deadpool is going to be that kind of property. And I'm curious to what you think. Kingsman's done very well. That's an R-rated movie, just past the century mark. But I think as long as they keep Deadpool's budget down and they continue to be very earnest and humble, and Ryan Reynolds really goes out there and campaigns for this and says, "Hey, my fault for making all those bad movies the past 5 or 6 years. Please come back." Maybe it'll succeed. But I think this isn't as strong a property as if you had like Jim Carrey at his heyday playing the role. That would have been, I think, really successful. And Jim Carrey, of course, was a mainstream talent. Because Deadpool is kind of like The Mask, only with comic books, and he kills people for reals. Whereas The Mask had cartoon-like humor. Humor as well, but violence. So think The Mask. So I was like, well, The Mask was successful, so why would Deadpool be? But then I was like, well, Jim Carrey was just coming off of Ace Ventura. He was just, audiences were just discovering him on the big screen. So it was just, it was lightning in a bottle. It was a great time for Jim Carrey and to be a Jim Carrey movie. But Ryan Reynolds, of course, has burned so many bridges with fans at this point, and especially the mainstream audience. We'll just see what happens. I think the time for him to be a great Deadpool might have been back when X-Men Origins Wolverine came out, and they'll be curious to see if he can circle back and recapture that original opportunity. All right, so those are the 3 stories of the day. Now for the viewer question, this has to do with Disney princesses. And this is from BSmart18. And this was actually, she wrote this on Movie Math. So if you write a question somewhere else, even if it isn't on a morning movie news, I might catch it and bring it over here, just like I'm doing today. BSmart18 wrote, "Grace, I have a question. Please pick me." So many smiley faces. I loved it. I loved your heartfelt request, so how can I deny it? So the question is, I love fairy tale reimaginings, both in live action and animated forms. So what is it going to take for Hollywood to adapt fairy tales from other cultures and or countries on a more regular basis? Disney's live action Mulan is a few years away, and Princess Moana is coming out next year, thankfully. Is it too much to ask to see more fantasy characters that look like me? Studies have shown that diverse casts make more money. Forget studies, BSmart18, the box office has shown it. But BSmart says, when will Hollywood wake up to this fact? Well, while I think that diverse movies have done quite well at the box office, I think, for instance, the Fast and Furious franchise is paving the way for diversity in Hollywood. I think that Disney has not had as strong luck in that regard. I think Big Hero 6 has been a big hit for them, so that's a positive step forward. But they might also attribute that to just the superhero angle. Because think about it, I think that of the non-Caucasian princesses, I think Jasmine is the most popular to date, and that's because of the Aladdin movie and, of course, the sequels and TV show that went along with it, animated series. And people are hoping for a live-action Aladdin. It is interesting that's not on Disney's slate for live-action movies, considering what a huge success the animated version was. But, they might feel it's going to be hard to duplicate Robin Williams' performance as the genie, but also, sadly, they might feel in live-action, if they cast ethnically correct actors, maybe it'll hurt the box office. I don't agree. I think that Disney has such a strong brand loyalty at this point. They should use that for good to create a ethnically correct cast, but just make such a beautiful, fantastic Middle Eastern epic that people are excited to see it, and that would be wonderful, and I would be very excited, and I think many people would. Alibaba is something Disney's also talking about doing, but of course they're thinking of whitewashing it, where Ali is really Alan. That's very disappointing, and it's exactly what BSmart is talking about. Why not make that ethnically correct and just take, I think a lot of people were drawn to Cinderella, correct me if I'm wrong, but by the beautiful production design and costumes. So why can't you apply that to a different movie? They certainly were low on star power when it came to Lily James, right? She's not a star. So I think that you could, and also Dev Patel. Let's not forget Dev Patel would be great perhaps as Aladdin. He's a wonderful actor. Chappie didn't do so great, but Second Best Exotic Marigold Hotel is doing well. And I think he certainly has as much recognition as Lily James. But anyway, and I know some of you might say, well, it's not exactly the correct ethnicity perhaps, but I think we're just trying to get in the ballpark. Let's get in the ballpark first, and then we can get to the right seat. So anyway, back to the Disney princess discussion. Well, Jasmine's been successful for them. I think that the other ones, Pocahontas, Mulan, and Tiana, well, they have their fan base, and a very potent fan base, by the way, which Disney should honor. And they do. There's merchandise for these characters. You do see them available at the parks for meet and greets. They just don't have the fan base that the other princesses do. They don't sell the merchandise, and they don't have the box office to back it up either. They're not even a Merida. They're not certainly an Elsa and Anna, and they're not even a Rapunzel. Rapunzel was a very successful character for Disney. So until these princesses, I think, start doing better for them in the animated market, and we'll see how Moana does. I don't think you're going to see that transfer over to live action, which is a shame. It's really disappointing. Although they should take heart that the Lion King, of course, and taking Shakespearean story and putting it in Africa worked out very well for them. That was with animals, and they continue only to represent it in that way. But I think Disney eventually will have to take this step, I'm hoping. But you know what? I think the answer to your question, BSmart18, is that be smart. I love your name, by the way. Go see Moana. If you want to see more diversity in Disney animation and live action, go see these movies. Everyone who went to see Big Hero 6, that was an important step. It's a shame Princess and the Frog didn't do better. It's a great movie. But go see Moana. It comes out in November 2016. Make sure you see it several times. And then if that does really well, Disney, I think, will be emboldened maybe to make a Moana live action, but to add more diversity to their films. You saw a little diversity, really just tokenism in Cinderella, but I guess, again, it's a step in the right direction. But I'm curious, how does everyone else feel? Is this something you would like to see? Do you plan on seeing Moana? And why do you think it is that these Disney princesses just aren't as popular when they have wonderful properties and certainly wonderful songs? Pocahontas, Mulan, and Tiana are all very, very good princesses, but it's unfortunate they just don't have the fan bases that the other ones do. All right, thank you so much for your question, BSmart18. I hope I gave you a little bit of a ray of hope with Moana there. I think that could be opening the door to some big things for Disney animation and live action. Everybody else, please write down what you think today of today's 3 top stories and that viewer question from BSmart18. Anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.